The following presentation was recorded at the 2011 SouthEast Linux Fest in Spartanburg, South Carolina. It is licensed under a Creative Commons license. For more information about the SouthEast Linux Fest, visit www.southeastlinuxfest.org. The SouthEast Linux Fest would like to thank the following Diamond and Platinum sponsors in 2011 for helping make these videos possible.
As you probably all know, this is Vincent Batts. Vincent is a developer on the core Slackware Linux team and a software developer for Akamai Technologies. He is the open source advocate in both the commercial arena as well as the community for Slackware, and a mindful geek.
Yeah.
Introduce Vincent Batts.
Thank you, thank you. So Slackware Demystified, and I thought this would be an interesting talk since I'm one of the newest folks on the core team or whatever of Slackware, and sure enough, as soon as I would say that I'm putting myself up for this, it just gets a little bit more intense. So I'm Vincent Batts. This is the talk. If you see me anywhere on the internet, you can pretty much Google for VBats. That's me. IRC handles, emails, whatever. So a little bit of what the talk's about. Bullet points. This is an overview. I'll hit some smidgens, some philosophy of it. It's funny when you go through and actually start putting together a talk like this because you start realizing the emptiness and what all's actually there. So when you think, I will give a talk on this thing, it's usually to say, there's not really anything there. Ta-da, it's magic. So first off, some smidgens. To the community at large, thank all y'all. Because I was originally intended to be an accountant in the world, so that's my education, that was my slant in life, and it has not been at all where I've gone. And I completely blame the open source Linux community for that, because people like you write stuff and put out good documentation and let other hungry geeks figure out what they want to do with it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Love, love, love. Hugs. But then secondly, to Slackware Linux, the team, Volkerding, who made a special guest appearance. If anybody has not recognized this yet, we have Pat Volkerding in the room, the founder of Slackware Linux. So Volkerding's in the room, and then the rest of the team that's considered the core group of folks is Alien Bob, Eric Hammerlers, that's in the Netherlands, Robbie Workman, who is around this weekend, Alan Hicks, who just talked a few minutes ago, Fred, Peter Punk, Alpha Geek. You might see some of these names around from time to time, but all of them are involved. So, heart to all of them. Iconically, you know what the name of that image is? No. Lemon Party. So, first off, I'll get the party started with a little bit of trivia. During this last release cycle of Slackware 1337 that was released about a month or so ago, one of our RC candidates in the about 5 or 6 RC candidates that happened, was pie. A Slackware beer bottle opener, for anybody who can tell me why it was pie. No? Anybody? I'll leave it standing. Oh, this is a good one too. Y'all should Google around and try and figure out that one. So this is staying for whoever can come up with. Do what? We had one of the.
No,
it was 3.14 to a large number.
Because it come full circle?
It's pretty deep, but no. Well, that was that 37 just by coincidence, I think. Yes, sir. No, the Pi being the version of the RC. The kernel version was .37, which was coincidentally 1337 also.
Because somebody got a wild hair up their butt.
Yes. There was a lot of that, but no. It was mildly elite, so There's a particular answer I'm looking for, so if y'all want to Google for that, I wouldn't blame you. So, second little trivia, and this might be a little easier for folks. Who knows who the guy smoking the pipe is? Oh, God. I'll just chunk this and mix it to you. Yeah. And then somebody else over here got it. So watch out. Okay. I'm sorry. All right. So who all in the room has run Linux? I mean, it's Slackware Linux. Yeah? Ever run it? Not just like this is my primary desktop. Who's played with Slackware Linux? Number of hands. Most of the hands. So Slackware Linux, this is usually like people think, ooh, Slackware, it's old, it looks like DOS, it's clearly stable because it must be old and that's what stable is. And then a lot of people think it's like cultist, like Slackware, It's not really, it's just kind of a funny name and it's stuck around and it's clever. But, so, next, who am I? Who am I? I'm VBATS. So I'm a Shade Tree Linux nerd. Again, my brother preceded me by 10 years, and he handed a open source Linux disk to a 13-year-old and said, hey, here's this thing called Linux, and that was a bad start. So anything else that I might have been destined to do in life was runt. And so since then, life has been life, and I've tinkered around, but I was actually playing with KDE and amongst other things that led me into being a part of the Slackware team in about the summer of 2009. So since then, my primary distractions are Ruby and KDE, and Ruby, whether you love it or hate it, I do too. So if you ever have any questions on those two things, feel free to hit me up. As a day job, I'm now a software developer, whatever, at Akamai Technologies. If you're not familiar with Akamai, we make the internet go very fast and efficient. And we are hiring, so feel free to hit up that URL or come talk to me if you want to know what it is like to work at Akamai. It's a really fun place. So this is my contact, VBATS at any one of those domains, you'll find me. If at any point I'm talking too fast, because I do that sometime, tell me to chill out, because I'll get speedy. So philosophy could only be preceded by the Velociraptor. So the majority of the philosophy is just to keep it simple. Slackware Linux as a operating system holds very true to two notions primarily. To stay as close to a Unix environment as possible, no bells, no whistle, like this is what the software that makes up the second part of it. A distribution is typically a collection, just all the different components that are the upstream from the community, put those all into one nice little pretty place and tie a ribbon around it. That thin ribbon is what you'd call Slackware. So to say that you use Slackware is effectively to say you've used the components comprised in that Slackware, which for most Linux distributions is the same stuff you're familiar with elsewhere. So the other thing that a lot of people don't find, and either they really, really like it or they really, really don't like, is the fact that there is no kind of, hey, let me help you with that, like some kind of helper script or something to automatically do something. There's none of that. If you want to know how to make something do that thing, go read that thing's documentation. So it's not just going to automatically pop up and say, hey, you've got new updates available, you need to do this. No, that's the system admin's position. So stick with upstream. If you've ever built anything from source, there's a lot of variations on this now, but this is essentially like you can, if you're familiar with this process, you're familiar with most of what's going on. Obviously not like sudo make install to just blow it across the system, but essentially this will get you used to whatever this is doing from whatever software you're interested in. You go download some component, whatever that does, is what you should expect to find on your file system, not some obfuscated process. So the other nice part about it is that sometimes when you get into researching how something happened, what all is involved in what just happened, the helper scripts that are also in the base installation are of what you would call the operating system of Slackware. It's all shell scripts. So either your startup scripts or your package management utilities. Other than that, it's upstream. So if really you had any true, honest-to-God bug reports, it might be the version of something like is using outdated or security vulnerability, but otherwise bugs would be of these things. So there's no real bugs that would go directly to Slackware. It's minimal. So again, no magic. It's shell scripts. They might look really cool, but they're shell scripts. So as a user, as a hacker, as a tinkerer, as a research person, I think the biggest thing that most people would have to find themselves, have to discover and go into what it is, like how do I as a user, or whatever your role is, work with Slackware is literally learning how to learn. Because it might be man pages, like if you're really getting down and dirty with the command line, that's what you need to learn how to do. If it's learning how to contribute back with another project, find out how they want to do their processes, like writing or compiling or documenting KDE, who knows what. You'd learn about that process. And in this, you can learn what to ask as a bug. Hey, I think I found something broken. Whatever it is, it's all a learning process, and it's not ever saying, hey, I learned that one nugget, that one gem that solved all my problems. If you were to say that, it would be the process of learning, because everything's constantly evolving. Whatever we take from upstream, there's something new and different about it. And this is not just, this slide is, except for maybe the reporting against stock Slackware, this slide could be true of anything. Learn how to ask an educated question. You'll get a lot more help from the community that way. If you walk out anywhere saying, hey, it's broken, I need somebody to help me fix it, you need to come in with saying, I've already tried this, I've already read this, learning how to learn and learning how to ask questions. So, as far as the actual services, Slackware sticks to the sysv init model, very small init binary that kicks off and runs a series of scripts or commands depending on what run level you've specified. It's tried and true. Next trivia, who knows what default run level Slackware's on? Bravo's saying it. It's run level 3. It varies from distribution to distribution. Some distributions now have trimmed that down to where there's not effectively any other run levels besides like multi-user X or a command line root console. This is a varied thing now. So in Etsy init tab, which is where init looks when it boots, you have single user mode, which is not like some fancy recovery console that asks you, hey, what do you want to do? This is like no services are running and you're asked for credentials, and anybody can log in at that point, but presumably root's going to log in because you're not going to be remoting into the box, nothing else. 3 is default, 2 and 5 both get you to the same type space as run level 3. And then a lot of people would want run level 4 because it boots straight into KDE, or if you've got GDM, it'll do GDM. Or if you want to kick it back to XDM, you can do that too. That change you can make in init tab, or you could pass Lilo some boot flags, but that's where it's set up. So then once that kicks off, these scripts, like if you just went and LS'd that top line, you'd see a lot more than this, but these are the primary commands that would be on the like a stock installation, and a brief synopsis of what they do. So if you ever wanted to know or walk through the process, wonder why something started before or after something else, what kind of algorithms were used to determine why this started after something else, it's not because they were like thrown into a file folder with numbers and something else. It's a very linear process for starting up, getting the system ready, and then kicking off services as they need to be. So you can, again, these are flat files. feel free to go walk through these things and read about them, learn about them. So local startups, you'll also find in that directory an RC local, beer holder to another local that is in that folder that you can run. It's not in that folder, another local that can be created to run. Anybody? Another RC local what?
No, let some of these people answer.
I know, Rob. Anybody else? Come on. Another RC local. And this actually exists on other distributions, but it's a file that's not present that's helpful when added. Goodness gracious. Yep. An underscore shutdown. So just like if you ever have files that install some kind of startup script like VirtualBox or PostScript or some other kind of postfix, you would stick it in RC local. RC local is provided, it's there by default, but if you wanted to create an RC local shutdown, you could also have things that are kicked off before the system shuts back down, whatever kind of daemons, clean up. Some daemons do not handle having their legs yanked out from underneath them. They need instruction to say, hey, system shutting down, stop me. You could do that in RC local shutdown.
Heartbeat is one of those.
Yes, Heartbeat is one of those. Alan Hicks just gave a talk on Heartbeat right next door, and Heartbeat is definitely one of those that will have blood and guts if you pull its legs out from underneath it. And you very likely might shoot the other node in the head just because if you didn't tell Heartbeat it's going down, then you have multiple machines drop offline. So the gist of these files are pretty straightforward, but it says, is the startup script you're looking at, is it executable? If so, run it. Or something like mode probing drivers in that don't get auto-loaded, or you want to make sure they, whatever. So upstream configurations. There's no kind of configuration abstraction that's shimmed into place that goes through and says, oh, you want to use MySQL or whatever. You come over to this file over here and set where, some parameters or whatever, boot parameters or whatever it is and this other thing, and the actual scripts that the upstream is using are just auto-generated configurations from this. There's none of that. There's lots of benefits, and I understand why lots of enterprising products want to do that, and they have one place, one unified view. But again, that's if all upstreams had written it to do that way, this was a consensus, then that's what we would get. But we do what the upstream has designated. So if when compiling it, something like sysconfdir etc, and then wherever it blows stuff into etc, that's where those files will be. So if you want to know how to configure some product, go consult them. They will tell you, or they should tell you. Other than that, these conf files you'll find in the startup directory, that's about the extent of some of the configurations that you're going to find that are, Slackware specific. Like etc init1, it allows you to set up multiple interfaces, whether you want them DHCP, hostname presented, and whatever else. So what's the bootloader? This would be easy for a lot of people. Lilo, who said that? Who said that? Right there. There you go, right on. So Lilo, it's old, it's like, this is one of the oldest, and it's under-maintained, but it still works and it's secure enough. Man pages are out there. Lilo is, I think some people fundamentally, when they come to their first relationship or encounter with Lilo, since so many people have moved to Grub, the separation of the fact that Grub menu list is queried upon boot time. So you could, boot into rescue and change something in Grub menu list or wherever else it is now, and then immediately reboot, and the next boot would just resource that file. Lilo is actually compiled and inserted into the master boot record. So if you messed up and forgot to tell it where the kernel was, you would have to, reboot into something else, cheroot onto top of that, or by some means use Lilo to install the configuration file telling it where that kernel is. I think this terrifies some people, but as well it should. I mean, it's kind of a security thing. You're not leaving yourself an easy back door. It's all built in. But it's tried and true, and it's very, I mean, it works with all kinds of OpenBSD, FreeBSD, Windows, all kinds of Linuxes. You can have multi-stage hard drives. So the first one has Lilo, and then it hands off to a certain partition, and that partition has grub, and away it goes. It's fine and good and all that. And then as far as the other bootloader type configurations, a lot of folks have worked on it, but Alien Bob is main culprit for our MK and NetRD to make your init RAM disk. And it's got a configuration file that you can use to generate your init RAM disk if you have LVM, encryption, RAID, whatever else that the kernel needs some instruction with on booting. You can find those there. So as far as a operating system type, not process in the terms of a PID, but processes in terms of like efficiency process, like documentation, how do you do something? Whenever you go through the process of building a package, or most of the packages are like in stock Slackware, if it's a configuration file that would land in Etsy and sometimes other places, it'll be with a .new. If it has anything that you might have tweaked, like HTTPD, you've changed something in your HTTPD Apache configuration. Next time you install it, you don't want it clobbered. This is 101. So the files are installed as a .new. Check to see if it's the same file. If it is, it chunks out the new one because there's no need in keeping it around. Some of them will put it, allow you to override it and put it to a backup. Slack PKG, Peter Punk from Brazil wrote and maintains this utility, and it's the most automated part of the package management system. It allows you to have a repository, pull and see if you have updates, install any new packages, or clean your system back to a stock installation. Very nice little automated tool, also all written in shell. This particular command, if you've installed anything by hand or whatever else, you can run this and it will iterate over Etsy and say, I've got a existing file and a .new of the same file. Do you want me to overwrite, delete this file? Do you want to see a diff of what it is? It allows you to one-for-one walk through. So you might have new changes you need to pull in, or you might just want to completely stick with what you have. Effectively, you could walk through this and do a find.new of your Etsy and see which files you want to pay attention to. This gets tedious, so it's nice, handy automation to have something to help you out with that, and not do anything automagically and clobber what you wanted done. So as far as the another philosophy, a lot of distributions might have gotten, like a familiar topic for a lot of people is the Ubuntu desktop meta package. The package has little, if any, actual context to it, except for a chain of dependencies that resolve out to a whole suite of software. So were you on a Ubuntu server, you could go do apt-get install Ubuntu desktop and it would know how to resolve, or should know how to resolve, that set. In the idea of that ultimate collection of what all do I need to resolve a working Ubuntu desktop, this is the notion that's already preset in place of not saying it for desktop usage, but a collection of software that is all-inclusive. It is whether you're a developer, whether you're a web administrator, whether you're a desktop user, this whole suite, top to bottom of packages, that's the Slackware installation. It'd be the same if you were going through the installer and said, I want the full install, I don't want to cherry pick, just go do the installation. It's 936 packages, less like KDE internationalization, which you might need, might not. And then in extra, there's a few other packages like Google Chrome now but other dependencies for those packages. And then slackbuilds.org. Dan did a nice job alluding to this earlier. Slackbuilds is the community organized project where you can say, hey, I installed Slackware, but it does not have X package. I want X package. Slackbuilds.org allows the community to go through and build their own sets of instructions to build those packages. And there's now an automated tool where you can say, go through and build everything or fetch whatever it is for me to have, OpenOffice or whatever, LibreOffice, and it can do that. So there's quite a number of packages out there, and it's nice because users can, any end user can end up becoming a contributor in that own right and having their own stake and maintainership of something and become like a subject matter expert in, GNU Cache or something. So, do what? Yeah, why would anyone want to do that? No. So the package structures are pretty straightforward. They're tarballs. If you've ever seen any site that offers a variety of different distributions to download, it's .deb or .rpm or whatever, and then a TGZ, which immediately you're like, that's all too familiar. That's a tar-gz. Yes, that's all it is. And you look inside of it, and it's not any kind of separate subcomponents or whatever. It's a file system tree relative to slash. The only meta type data is going to be you'll see at root / an install directory with usually two files. A Slack desk, which is just the description of what component it is, like info, and then the doinst, which is the only scripts during the installation, and it is a post-install. So as far as like pre-install, post-install, pre-uninstall, post-uninstall, that you might be familiar with, this is just a post-install. So here's another, this is a mildly up the stakes on this one. What else can be used in a stock Slackware installation? And judging at the character of answering the other questions, I don't know if this one's going to fly. Anybody? Even from the core group? No. So you've got varlog set up package name. So you can actually, if you had something that you wanted to ask questions of the user when it goes through the post-installation, like a configuration, how do you want me to handle this, or do you want me to set it up like this or like that? This is like a place to put scripts that are typically going to be curses or dialogue based. So you can walk through and actually have menus and ask the user, like prompt the user for something when it's going through to configure itself after post-installation. So the tools, this is the magic. So any one of these man pages, you'll find that there's a tremendous amount of tremendous amount of documentation, decent amount of other flags. Most people are ever going to stick on the last three: installing a package, removing a package, or upgrade package. If you're using Slack PKG, it just calls these. It's a front end to all these things. So these are what actually walks through and makes sure you don't like clobber old file, or that you do clobber old files, or don't remove a file that's still owned by another package. But they even offer some fancy fun stuff that is nice sometimes when archiving or wanting to look at a package. Say, hey, I've already installed this to my system. I need to reassemble that tar-gz, or I need to rebuild that file structure from this existing package. It's within these tools that you could go through and actually say, hey, here's a package I've installed, recreate me, or build the file thing so I can tar-gz it again and make a package back out of it. So pretty handy stuff. As far as any of the installed information, it's varlog packages or varlog scripts. So you want to see, what do I have installed? What files does it own? What scripts did it run during installation? This is it. I mean, it's a directory full of files that you can walk through. Nothing elusive, just a little bit of bookkeeping to see where it was.
Point out you can read all that stuff with the text editor. You don't need any.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need anything more than less or more or whatever. Cat. You don't need more or less than more or less. because each one of the nodes in these directories is a flat text file that is the name of the package less the tar.gz, and the contents of it are the description and the files. That's it. So you can sit there and walk around rather than having to know what flags to search for what. Once you upgrade or remove them, they moved in the same var log, but to removed packages or removed scripts. So you could see a history of when did I upgrade this, when did I remove this, what did that, I knew I had it and I had uninstalled it, what did own this file. So grepping around here is super straightforward. I guess the only other elusive or whatever part when a lot of people are used to a GUI desktop and you boot into the installer and you get a command line. You walk to the installer and it reboots and it's like, yay, you've got an installed Slackware box. It's a command line. Most people say, where's my point and click? Where's my GUI? Where's my desktop? So Xorg is really, it's kind of a choice. It's not like we're going to shove one way or the other down your throat. It's not, just getting a command line is not saying you've got a server now. It's just a raw box, like this is what it starts with. So if you chose to go the route of a command line, and not to say it's a server, I don't need X on this server, you've got all the tools you need to have a robust desktop that's just command line oriented. Be it editors, be it music players, be it games, be it God knows what, news readers, chat clients, all of that. It is very, very inordinately, very much robust in all the tools. Like at any given day, you can go peruse packages and find new commands that you had no idea existed just for command line use. So server, command line desktop, or an X desktop. This command is owned by the Slackware packages itself. So this is another Slackware specific command. But xwm config, so you boot into your user, you log in for the first time, and xwm config will let you say, hey, I want to use, this user wants to use KDE or XFCE or any one of the default window managers that comes on a Slack installation. You can set this up, and all it does is create or make a symlink for your xinitRC, and then start X. And away you go. Now you're at official desktop. Yes?
I just had a quick question. Does the installer still admonish you that if you prompt for all the X packages, it can take a year?
Yeah, it does still say. It says on the newbie install. So the question was, does the installer still inform you that to install would take a year? And it's actually under if you choose the newbie installation, which, just like Linux from scratch, reading the documentation, it will walk you through each package. Do you want to install this package? Do you want to install this package? It says to walk through this for Xorg very well could take a year because it's so modular. There's so many components that to acknowledge each one of them. Do you want XIs installed? Do you want? It'll take a while. So yes, that is still there. And that section of the installer has been left the same way for a long time until this last release. There's now a
Just do a full
yeah. That part of the installer has been the same way for a long time, but now there's been a terse added, so it'll actually run through stuff with an abbreviated bit. But most recommendations, unless you know what you're doing, and even then it comes with caveats, of just do a full install because it makes the playing ground more equal of knowing, oh, you're seeing this bug issue because you chose to not install the subsuite of libraries because you didn't recognize the name. So kernels, it's a pretty, again, vanilla process. Very, very, very rarely will you ever see a patch to the kernel because usually the kernel itself will have some kind of new update that is pushed out very quickly if there's a CVE or something like that. So what you get is if you wget something off of kernel.org. There's two kernels, effectively two kernels available in Slackware, a huge, which is just a large kernel. It's not an all-inclusive kernel because there's still .kos, but you could stick it on most anything and it will boot and have everything it needs for multiple file systems, multiple hardware types. It's all there. The generic is trimmed down a lot, but it's still from the same core config, and it's very interesting, and I'm not jealous of the job of walking through that configuration script, Pat. Not a little bit. But generic, you must have an init RD, an init RAM disk. So earlier you saw the MK init RD. To use generic, you must have an init RAM disk because it won't know what ext3 is. It's pretty trim. The interesting part of having two different kernels that are very different in that nature, they all use the same tree of .kos, all the modules. So regardless of whether you boot into one or another, it's not like you're maintaining two large sets of drivers. This aspect of it is still mildly mystical to me, but I have not taken the time or brain cycles to figure out how and why this is possible. But to have two totally different kernel configurations and they pull from the same kernel modules, good luck with that. So, hacking the kernel. It seems like a lot of people, one of their first Twitter posts in life are, hey, I installed Slackware and I compiled the latest kernel. Ha! This is like an achievement, a bumper sticker they want to put on their car. First off, whatever it is, if you're using the current development branch or 1337, whatever repo version you're using, go check in the directory of testing first, because not uncommon, you will find our last Slackware release shipped with certain 2637 version, but in testing for this official release, there was two more kernel versions in there. So if people wanted to try 38 and 39, you shipped to 39, really, yeah. There's two newer kernels there, but they were just kind of like, hey, give it a try so we could get some feedback if it broke or worked for other people. But as far as the stable version, it's not there. So go check in testing first. It'll be a good place to find how it was done, any configuration differences. The source of the current running Linux kernel is in user source Linux. So, you're playing with some new thing that needs to see headers or, anytime you've had something that says, hey, I need your kernel headers, like an NVIDIA blob or something like that. There's no extra packages that you need to go out and say, hey, I need development packages and I need a compiler and I need my kernel headers and all that. No, that's already all built in. It's in there by default. And the full untarred Linux source is already on the system and ready to go. And we've opted for the kernel configuration so that in the current running active state kernel proc/config.gz, it's a kernel space file, but that file is the configuration for the kernel. So if you needed to see what flags were chosen, or does it not have config_blah, it's in that file. So if you wanted to be super elite and go out and download Linux 3.0 RC2, woo! You get that file, untar it, CD to it, zcat your proc config, make old config, and away you go. There's no worrying about what patches were applied after they got the kernel, what version, if it says it's kernel 2637. Blah, it's straight from kernel.org. You could go fetch it and reproduce the, approximate it by yourself. So, that having been said, that this is like an achievement that people want to compile their own kernel, and you should, to get familiar with the process. When you do that, please, if you ever see any kind of peculiarities, hey, I rebooted and now I can't start X, go back to a stock kernel and revalidate it before you come saying to people, oh my God, all this stuff is not working anymore, it's broken. No. You ventured out into left field and you don't know how to find your way home. Just validate it against the stock kernel, and if anything, ask for help or say, hey, I'm trying to get X running on this. I've tried X and Y. What do I need to do? Because frequently, starting X is pretty straightforward because there's a lot of drivers, but a lot of times there might be other obscure things that start breaking or clocks are off or who knows what. It's out there. So as far as the Slackware community, if you go to slackware.com, you'll find odds and ends links to where to find information or facts or thanks to these group of people or whatever. But as far as like a actual formidable place, sometimes people hunt around for a minute, or they aren't. It's not shouted in your face of, hey, new Linux user, come to this place. So you wonder where it is. This is about the extent of where you will find the largest selection of Slackware nerds, and it's really interesting even that, like Usenet, AOL's Alt OS Linux Slackware is a very active and very peculiar group of people. And it's been that way for a long time, and if you're feeling feisty, you're welcome to go ask questions or offer yourself up to the trolls. But these are still wealth of information. So if you ever wanted to search back on archives, these things are out there. LinuxQuestions.org, fantastic website. That's considered to be the forum of choice for Slackware. So if you want to search how-tos, or if other people are having this issue or whatever, or ask a question of, say, whatever, check out linuxquestions.org. That's the URL. And frequently, we all watch it to some extent, but frequently a lot of reports and stuff like that come through this means, like other people saying, hey, are you having this issue? We all watch that. So, as far as like reporting an issue, this is that's one of the main ways to come in. Most of these are all good, but the last two are mailing lists. This is really like idle hands. Like sometimes you'll get into some good discussions, but it's still out there. Additional packages and more community is slackbuilds.org. It's been a really fantastic thing. It's given a lot of people a platform for expression. A lot of people just wanted to have something that they owned, and that's great for them. It's got its own mailing list and IRC channel. So if you want to get more involved or familiar with packaging and what that means and the life and woes of a packager and how to how to work with upstream as a packager, this is a great place to get your hands wet, get your hands dirty, feet wet. So bug tracking, there is no bug tracker. There's no place to log in, do this formal form, and you're given a number and you're asked to please wait. None of that. If you correspond with somebody on the team, you can get yourself heard that way, or if through the forums you've discussed something in depth, and if you haven't found it out yourself, then frequently it'll be over emails and forums. But there's not much OS to interfere with. So as far as actually reporting bugs on the operating system, it's interesting sometimes, because even as like a metric of like how many bugs are we getting, it's pretty irrelevant, because most of the time we don't and really shouldn't, we do not and really should not hear about most of the bug reports, because if there's a problem in this program, the bug report goes to that program, not to us. It shouldn't come to us because we're not the writers of it. So most of the time it's just the little massagings of why is this not working with another app? Well, that might have been how we told it to install. But so people overuse this, and I don't know how it's properly used, but keep it simple. There's not a lot of magic, and if anything, there's like a zen of Slackware, a zen of Linux when you get to it, because it's like the more you focus on it, the more you try and look into what it is, there's nothing there. It's as far as what defines this thing, you become enlightened to the emptiness of what's actually there. So just keep it simple, no auto magic. Questions from anybody?
Were any lemons harmed in the creation of
The question was, were any lemons harmed in the making of this slide presentation? I can neither confirm nor deny that one.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So,
Okay, Self 2010 called and they want my comment back.
what? Nicely. So here's the links to this slideshow. What else? The slide is actually, the slideshow is already published up on the website. And it was done using a pretty interesting Ruby project called Show Off. Anyhow, so if there's no more questions, then that is it. I've got two last pieces of user swag, and these things are not going out to anybody. So who can use a 32-bit or a 64-bit installer on USB for Slackware? Anybody? I'll chunk amongst you. So brace yourself.
If they've got CDs, I've got iSets too.
Oh, wow, that was a line drive. Yeah, no injuries.
Foul ball?
I was not a baseball player.
Let them know if they've got CDs, we've got iSets.
Oh yeah, so if at the booth, if anybody has a CD or whatever else, we have a local mirror set up so you can, sync it off if you need to do that or want to do that. So, yeah, thank you very much.
What about this?
I can help with
I like
that.
it.
We have the same problem.
What would happen if you did this?
You gave me a good found idea. A problem. How do you do that?
It's like this.
I disagree.
Who would have thought of that?
Let's put the word out.
As a service leader in cloud computing, all we do is hosted computing. To us, the cloud is just the next generation of hosting. And as someone who's been in the hosting industry for 12 years, we feel we're in a unique position to really help bring these two worlds together, these different sets of technologies, and to help companies embrace this new world and this great new tool that allows faster innovation. Not only is it about us being responsive and accountable, but it's about us doing more for you.
WebOS, an OS that works the way that you do. Across all your devices, HP Slate and WebOS. HP.